Hey everybody, it's Brad again. Today we've got another viewer mailbag video for you. This one comes from a comment off of my last viewer mailbag video. Let's see what we've got. So Real Solutions here says, great video, Brad. You answered a bunch of my questions. One topic I've yet to learn is outlines. I'm having a terrible time figuring out the process. Take a look at this image for example. Okay, click on that. Got a Santa Claus, and he does indeed have outlines. Okay. Notice the black outlines around and inside the image of Santa. I'd be forever grateful if you cover this topic. In one video you said you were going to use a running stitch, but you'd normally do it in a satin stitch. Every time I try that, it fills my object size. Thanks. Okay, so we can do that. So let's look at this image here. Well, here we go. We've got these areas in here can all be fills, and then the lines. Honestly, if I was doing this design, I'd probably do his outlines as a running stitch, not as a satin stitch, but I'll show you how to do it both ways. I have taken the liberty of already digitizing the fill parts of this design. Okay, so we've got, if you want to see how to do a fill stitch design, then watch the last one that I did on the dinosaur. That's I do pretty much everything with a fill stitch. That's pretty much the most basic way to do it. Okay, so I'm going to put this in 3D so we can see the stitches here. All right, so we've got all of his little areas are done in a fill stitch, and what we want to do is put the outline around him. This outline is pretty thin. If we look, you can see that it really is not that bold of an outline. And I think that a running stitch would probably look the best with this Santa Claus, and would also be like 1,000 times easier to do. I'm going to show how I would do that first, and then I'm going to go and show you how to do the satin stitch outlines. Alright, so to do the running stitch, what I would do is go up and use my run stitch tool up here on the top. You could also do this with the line and then change it into a run stitch, but there's really no reason to do that because we know we're going to make it a run stitch, so there's like nothing else we could do with it. You may as well use the run stitch tool. Left click on that, and I'm going to zoom in so that I can see through my my stitching, but I don't want to hide my stitching because I want to be able to see that I'm getting on the edge of my stitching to do my outline when I'm going around the edges here, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. But okay, so I'm going to start kinda anywhere. It really doesn't matter where I start because this whole outline is connected one way or another throughout the whole thing, and I am going to do it all as one continuous line. Alright, so I'm going to start here in his beard. I like beards. I'll start in the beard. So I'm just going to start by just beginning to left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, left click. Okay, this is going to be a very left clicky design. Okay, so we're left clicking everywhere that I see a black outline, and remember, you can always hide your movements in a running stitch. Oops, I just went off. Remember, when you click in the wrong place, you just hit backspace. You can always hide your movements by clicking back over yourself. Alright, because we're going to do this not just as a single run. We're going to do it as at least a double run, maybe a bean stitch if I decide I want to try it that way. And I'm just going to go everywhere that there's a black line. Oh, and look at me. I'm clicking too close together. Bad, 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 bad. I have bad habits, and you should not. You should not click this close together. Okay, I've done it up here, but essentially, the closer together you click, the closer together your stitches are, because each time you click, it forces a stitch in there, and it's not good. It's a bad habit to be in clicking too much, and I have that bad habit because, well, because I had already learned how to do this essentially by the time somebody told me not to do that, and it was kind of too late for me. Alright, so when I get to the edge over here, what I want to do is make sure that I cross over my stitch points a little bit. See, I can see the edges of my fill stitch here. I want to make sure I cross over them a little bit when I'm on the edge like this. Alright, and the reason for that is you want to have that little bit of overlap there so that your outline doesn't have a gap. Just trust me on this. You want to stay just inside. So if you have to go off of your outline just a little bit, see how close I'm hugging the inside edge of this outline. If you have to do that, then just do it. And if you notice that my fills don't line up exactly perfectly, that's because I digitized the fills in this at about 2 minutes, so I wasn't being exactly careful. But so we're going around the outside edge here, and what we're going to do is just link up this whole design so that the whole running stitch outline is all one single line. That's how I like to do my running stitch outlines. And you may notice that I'm being kind of sloppy. I have no intention of sewing this design out, so by all means, when you are tracing this design, you want to do things like hold down the control key as you're going along a curve to make a perfect curve. I'm not going to do that, but I'm just going to do it kind of quickly. Up and around this part of the line. When you're on the inside, it's not nearly as critical as when you're on the outside, unless you're on the border between two colors. Then you do still want to cross over like this, and maybe even make it kind of like a double line. Like I'll go around this side, and I may want to go and trace the bottom edge of this. And remember that thread has a width that is much greater than the line that this is showing is able to render on the screen. So these two lines here are going to be almost on top of one another. All right, but it is just going to ensure that I have no gap. Going around the belt here, and I am, you know what, I'm doing this in a really kind of haphazard way. Probably want to go, I guess it really doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't. Like, I could be haphazard here, it wouldn't make any difference, because I'm gonna trace over all of this eventually, and I have no problem with running back over myself to hide my movements. And once I get to a point where I have to do that, I'll show you what I mean. Actually, I'm going to come up to one right now. I'm coming around this corner, and I have to go back in here. I have nowhere to go from here. I have to go back like that. That's what I mean when I say hide your movements. Okay, and I'm just going around here. Let's see, I have a decision to make here. I can come back around here and meet with my original stitch, or I can go back up this way. I may as well just go down here, run back over myself, and then meet back up with this end of the glove when I come back around. Either way, I would have had to travel back through the design, whichever one I chose. So, okay, and I'm just going to trace up here. Actually, you know what? I could go back around this way. And honestly, I have no real rhyme or reason as to how I am pathing this. I'm not really like a trained digitizer, so my pathing is kind of atrocious on most of my designs, but that's alright. In the end, it still looks good. So I'm just clicking around this guy, and now I'm going to come back down here and link up with where I was down when I was doing the belt. See, now I'm just back down here, traveling through my stitches in the belt. I'm going to go up, trace the inside of this belt buckle, bring this back up here, and I actually kind of like the look of like a rough running stitch like this, where it kind of almost looks sketched. In fact, I've done outlines in the past using, instead of using the line tool, using the pencil tool, and I kind of like the sketch look of it, but I don't have the fine motor control to like really do the pen tool and have it really like be really satisfied with the results of it, honestly. I think if I had like a tablet, oops, I just made a big mess up there. Clicked way outside the line. Remember, just backspace whenever that happens. Now here, I am sloppily doing it wrong right here. Okay, so let me zoom in and show you what I just did wrong. See how these points here are not on the stitch at all? And let me hide the backdrop so that you can see exactly what I mean here. This is, I am just way far off of this stitch. Let me make my running stitch black so we can see it. Okay, so I'm just way off the stitch here. Alright. Now I just accidentally clicked and made it so that this is not going to be all one shape. I didn't accidentally click. I turned off the backdrop tool on purpose so that you'd be able to see what I just did. But you see why I'm telling you to stay inside your stitch points? If I trace this up inside of here, then there's going to be that little bit of overlap. And remember that this has a width. This has a width that is greater than the computer is able to render it. Okay, so it's not gonna look like it's on the inside of it unless I go like way in here. All right, what are we zoomed in? We're zoomed in 3,200% right now. All right, that's way zoomed in. But anyway, when you're doing an outline like this, I'm gonna stop doing this because I think you get the idea here. I would have continued going up in here and just crossed over every single part of his hat and his face, and everywhere that there's a running stitch I would have done, and I should have done his feet too. Let's put this in 3D, and then it's also important to note that this will always look terrible on the computer screen. The computer is just, for one reason or another, unable to properly render a running stitch, I think, anyway. And I think that any running stitch design that you make, running stitch outline rather, that you go around fills like this, that you do, is going to look atrocious. It always does. So you just got to sew it out to see that it looks good. Just the way that it is. Alright, so anyway, let's go ahead and delete this running stitch, and I'll show you the other way, which is to use a satin stitch. I'm going to bring my backdrop back here, and I got to turn off 3D so I can see. Now, I am definitely not doing this whole thing, but I will show you what the technique is for doing this. So to make these outlines as a satin stitch, you might think that what you'd be able to do is take each individual area, like here, this is his nose in my sequence view, take each individual area, copy and paste it, okay, to get the second outline, and then make the outline of it a steel stitch and set the width to something really narrow, like 1 millimeter. We'll make that black so we can see it, and I'll draw this in 3D. And in fact, that works perfectly well for his nose. But if I did that for every one of these shapes, I'd have these satin stitches running over each other all over the whole thing. Like these satin stitches would be on top of one another, and what I can't do is have I can't tell it how the end is going to look. Like I can't, like a steel stitch always has square ends, like, okay, like here, and then I make it a steel stitch. The ends, they're always going to be square like that, okay. You don't have the kind of control over it that I want to have when I'm using a steel stitch. So basically, what I would do is trace the outline itself. Like here, I'm going to do this part of his mustache. So I'm tracing the outside edge of the mustache, and when you're making a satin stitch by tracing it, you want to trace the outside edge and even a little bit farther outside of the outside edge, just a little hair, because when you make a satin stitch, it actually pulls in a little bit, and it ends up narrower than you think it's going to be. But so here I'm drawing this shape, and I'm just kind of going to cut it off inside of here because I'm going to have this overlap these little endpoints here. Right? Okay, so I've closed my shape. I'm going to make this black. Alright, so we've got this part. And there's two ways that we can do this now. We can either do an auto satin. Just click on here. That's the easy way. And we'll draw it in 3D so we can see it. And the thing is, the auto satin works pretty darn well in this program. Okay, so whenever you can get away with this, do it. There's no reason not to. But there are going to be some shapes that are too much for the auto satin to handle. And when that happens, then you have to draw the inclinations in yourself. Okay, let me turn the 3D off. I'm going to do this one by drawing the inclinations in myself. Okay, so I'm going to use my line tool, go up, and I draw this side in here. Okay, just like I did on the other one. But this time, instead of hitting auto satin, I'm going to hit the satin stitch. Okay, so I've drawn my closed-in shape here, and I hit satin. Alright, now here I can go and draw in my inclinations. It's going to put my satin stitch in there, and I'm choosing the stitch direction the whole time. I like doing it this way better than the auto satin, even though the auto satin works so well in this program. And honestly, it does. It works really well, the auto satin. I like to do it myself. So once you draw your inclinations in, that's the direction that you want the stitches to go. You right click twice and it'll generate the stitches, or you can hit the select tool, it'll generate the stitches too. I'll put it in 3D and we can see that this is done basically the exact same thing as it did over here. Okay. Now, as we're doing this, we want to think about the order that we're doing everything in, and you are also going to want to set the start and stop points for everything. Okay, so if, for instance, this is my first line that I do, and this is my second line that I do, if I go over to the shape tool, my start point doesn't really matter that much, but my stop point needs to be right where, somewhere that it's touching, hopefully, the next section. Alright, so I'll put my start point up here, my stop point all the way at the end. Okay, and then I'm going to take my next shape here, this second satin path, and I'm going to take the start and move it right where the stop is on the first one, and then I'm going to take my stop and move it somewhere that it's going to touch my next line, which is going to be going around his nose. Okay, so that it flows. It's going to go start here, stop here, start here, and then you're not going to, it's going to be like a continuous thing. All right, it's not going to leave jump stitches all over the place, because there's nothing worse than having jump stitches like everywhere after you sew the design out. And even machines that cut the jump stitches, you're going to have a million of them if you're going to do each one of these as a single segment. All right, so let's see, we'll turn off the 3D. And let's do his nose. His nose is a special case here, and you're going to have this too. Sometimes your shape is not going to be a closed-in shape, or is not going to be an open shape like this. This is going from here to here, so I can just draw like a box end on the end of this and come around like that. With this circle, there's no end to it. It's a circle. So how do we do that? It's pretty easy, and it's pretty intuitive, really. What we're going to do is we're going to draw two separate circles. So we take our ellipse tool, we're going to draw in, and I keep saying circle, obviously I mean oval. I'm going to rotate this a little bit so that it lines up with my outer part of my nose. I'm going to do the same thing, draw another one. Okay, line it up with the inner part of Santa's nose here. Okay, good enough for government work. We're going to take both of these. I'm going to hold the control key down and select both of them. All right, and we're going to right click, choose combine. Okay, now we have this as a perfect closed-in shape. Alright, so when I hit the auto satin tool on it, it's going to put my nice pretty stitch in there, draw it in 3D, there it is, and I'll set my start and my stop point. So my start picked up right where I wanted it to, my stop I'll put wherever is closest to the next start that I draw. Alright, so like I said, I'm not going to go and digitize this whole thing, because it's kind of late and I'm ready to go have some digitizing beverages. And yeah, but that's pretty much how you do it, either one type of outline or the other. And like I said, I'd recommend using the running stitch on the Santa Claus if this is what you're doing anyway. So hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time. Thanks for watching.